Have you ever had one of those moments where a tiny mistake spirals into something completely unexpected, maybe even something wonderful? Today, I want to take you back in time, all the way to Edinburgh, Scotland. In the year 1899, picture a historic church, its stone walls echoing with centuries of stories, getting ready for its biggest event of the year, the Christmas Eve service. The air is crisp, maybe a light dusting of snow is on the ground, and inside the congregation is filled with anticipation. The centerpiece of the evening is always the choir, whose angelic voices are meant to lift everyone's spirits. This year, however, a little problem was brewing behind the scenes. A problem that could have turned the whole performance into a complete disaster. The choir director, a stern but fair man named Mr. Alistair Finch, was known for his meticulous attention to detail. Everything had to be perfect, from the pitch of the sopranos to the posture of the tenors. And of course, the choir's appearance had to be immaculate. For Christmas, they always wore a set of beautiful, deep blue robes, meant to evoke the color of the winter sky at twilight. Weeks before the big night, Mr. Finch sent the robes out for their annual cleaning. It was a routine task, something done every year without a hitch. But when the robes returned, just days before the performance, something was terribly wrong. As the choir members began trying on their garments, a quiet murmur rippled through the dressing room. Mr. Finch, hearing the commotion, strode in to see what was amiss. His eyes widened in disbelief. The robes were no longer a uniform shade of deep blue. Half of them had faded to a soft, delicate sky blue, the color of a clear winter morning. The other half, however, had turned a murky, grayish blue, reminiscent of an overcast, gloomy day. It was a visual catastrophe. Imagine half your choir looking bright and cheerful, and the other half looking like they were dressed for a funeral. The contrast was jarring. Panic began to set in. Whispers of, "What will we do?" and "This is a disaster," filled the room. The younger members looked on the verge of tears, convinced their Christmas performance was ruined before it even began. Mr. Finch stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. There was no time to get new robes. There was no budget for a last-minute solution. Canceling was out of the question. The entire community was looking forward to this. For a man who prided himself on perfection, this was his worst nightmare. He could feel the pressure mounting, the eyes of 24 choir members fixed on him, waiting for a decision, for a miracle. He took a deep breath, the scent of old wood and beeswax filling his lungs, and looked at the two distinct groups of blue before him. And then, in that moment of high-pressure chaos, a spark of pure genius, or perhaps desperation, ignited in Mr. Finch's mind. He clapped his hands together, silencing the anxious chatter. A slow smile spread across his face. A disaster? He boomed, his voice full of theatrical flair. My dear singers, this is not a disaster. This is a subtle artistic gradient. The choir stared back at him, completely baffled. A gradient? What on earth was he talking about? Mr. Finch, now fully committed to his new vision, began rearranging the choir members. He didn't just mix them up randomly. He started to orchestrate them like he would their voices. You with the sky blue stand here, he'd command, placing a singer on one end of the risers. And you, with the stormy blue over here, he moved them around, creating a gentle flow of color from the light, airy blue on one side, gradually deepening into the somber, darker hue on the other. He explained his vision with growing excitement. They weren't just two clashing colors. They were a visual representation of the winter sky itself, from the bright hope of a new day to the contemplative twilight. The choir members, initially skeptical, started to catch his enthusiasm. They looked at their new arrangement, and for the first time they saw what he saw. It wasn't a mistake anymore. It was intentional. It was art. The panic in the room evaporated, replaced by a nervous excitement. This was going to be different, that was for sure. They had a new secret weapon, an unplanned visual element that would make their performance unforgettable. The rehearsal that followed was one of the most energetic they'd ever had. They sang with a newfound purpose, their voices soaring to fill the church, now matched by a story told in shades of blue. On Christmas Eve, the church was packed. The congregation waited, candles flickering, for the choir to make their entrance. As they filed in and took their places on the risers, a soft gasp rippled through the audience. People craned their necks, murmuring to their neighbors. Instead of the expected uniform sea of blue, they were greeted with this beautiful, flowing spectrum of color. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The effect was mesmerizing. As the choir began to sing, "O Holy Night," the visual gradient added a whole new layer of emotional depth to the music. The lighter blues seemed to lift the hopeful verses, while the darker shades grounded the more solemn, reflective passages. Mr. Finch conducted with more passion than ever before, his heart swelling with pride. He had taken a potential failure and, with a bit of quick thinking and a lot of confidence, turned it into a triumph. The performance was a massive success. The choir had never sounded better, and the visual spectacle was the talk of the town. The very next day, a small article appeared in a local Edinburgh newspaper. The reporter, who had been in the audience, didn't write about a wardrobe malfunction. Instead, they praised the choir's innovative presentation, describing the mismatched robes as an accidental symbol of winter's rich and varied color palette. The story of the gradient robes became a piece of local holiday lore. For years afterward, people would ask if the choir was going to do their special color effect again. The church never intentionally repeated the fading, but the legend lived on. It became a charming reminder that sometimes the most memorable and beautiful things in life aren't the ones that go perfectly according to plan. They're the ones that come from embracing imperfections, from finding the beauty in the unexpected. That night in 1899, a simple laundry error taught a small community in Edinburgh a valuable lesson. With a little creativity and a positive outlook, even a disaster can be transformed into a masterpiece. It shows that our reaction to a problem is often more important than the problem itself. So the next time something in your life doesn't go quite right, just remember Mr. Finch and his choir. Maybe it's not a disaster. Maybe, just maybe, it's a subtle artistic gradient waiting to be discovered. Thanks so much for watching and letting me share this wonderful little piece of history with you. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tales of unexpected triumphs. Until next time, stay creative and find the beauty in the imperfections.